Welcome to the You Are Worthy Network. We are live this Monday, what is today? May the 11th. Oh, crazy, crazy, crazy to me that just a few months ago we were jotting down, depending on how you're wired. I'm not a resolution guy. I'm a goal guy all the time, but not resolution just to turn the calendar. I'm like, but I'm not judging those that do. But I have become a word guy, a theme guy. And I don't even know why I do that because it's such a trend the last few years. It's supposed to help you stay focused. I guess it does. I do have a theme word like everybody else. But regardless of where you fall in that, it was just a few months ago we were doing that. And here's the year. I mean, it'll be June in a couple of weeks. We're almost halfway through this year, as crazy as that sounds. But what is the You Are Worthy Network? Why do I ask that question of my own network? Well, it's because God has grown this network to 13,400 people in 9 months. And so I'm well aware that you could be chiming into this today, or you could be one of the several hundred, if not more people that watch this in the next couple of weeks. And I want to tell you why I created it just briefly, because I want to get to our special guest. I created this for you. I created this to fight back against the enemy and against the world's lies that you're not worthy. And you know why? Because I bought that lie myself for 56 years. And I knew better. And I still bought it hook, line, and sinker. So we interview wonderful people, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders. We talk about their successes, what they've overcome, what they're doing now to serve. But you know what else we talk about with them? Times when they didn't feel worthy, because you know what? That's all of us. We've all gone through those seasons, and we want to remind you that wherever you're at on your journey, your story's not over yet. And if it's tough, I'm going through a couple tough things right now. If it's tough, it's a chapter. It's not the whole book. So I want you to be encouraged. And then once in a while, we come across an unbelievable story that's hard to tell, but we need to tell because it's therapeutic processing it. But it also lets you see through somebody's difficult trials that we have a lot to be grateful for and healing is available. And I hope that's what you get out of today. So, with all that being said, I want to introduce you to my new friend and amazing woman of God. This is Nicole Canamare. Hope I said it right. She is a wife, a mother of three, and a woman who has walked through deep loss and found her way back to hope. Her life changed forever when she lost her son to addiction. In that moment, everything she thought she knew about herself unraveled. She questioned her worth, her identity, and whether she had somehow failed as a mother. The weight of grief and unworthiness was overwhelming. For a long time, she wrestled with these thoughts. Am I enough? Did I miss something? Could I have done more? But in her darkest place, God met her there, not with condemnation, but with compassion. He began to gently restore her heart and show her a truth she couldn't see before. Her worth was never her worth was never based on her performance, her past, or her pain. Through faith, she's experienced healing, restoration, and a renewed sense of purpose. She's learned that even in the middle of trauma and grief, peace is possible and our stories are not over. Now she's passionate about helping other women who feel broken, unworthy, or lost rediscover their identity and find peace in the midst of life's hardest moments. She reminds us today that you are worthy, you are seen, and there is still purpose for your life. And she's honored to share a piece of her journey with us today. Nicole, welcome to the You Are Worthy Network.
Thank you, Steve. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
I got to tell you, I'm reading that and I know a little bit about the story because you and I've talked, obviously, but it definitely hits right in the heart.
Mm.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to those days and how you're helping others now. Like I was talking about at the beginning before I introduced you, it's been such a tremendous blessing watching the Lord grow this group. And one of the things I really love is that I know that eventually, like even your interview, it's going to be seen by people outside the United States.
Mm.
And so it's such a growing network. But why don't you tell the folks what corner of the world are you from?
So I live in a small town in Georgia, right outside. Most people are familiar, if you're in the United States, with Athens, Georgia, or UGA. And so we have a small farm about 25 minutes outside of Athens.
Can you still hear me, Nicole?
I can. Uh huh.
Okay, we got stepped on somewhere there. The joys of
Yeah,
going live.
that's
So I'm
okay.
sorry if you don't mind repeating that. So you live on a farm just outside of Athens. Is that what I
Yep.
heard?
Yep. About 25 minutes outside of Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is located.
Yeah, beautiful country. I was telling
Hmm.
Nicole my son goes to a Christian camp, not terribly far from there, so I know the area a little bit. Beautiful part of the country for sure. So tell us about your family. Who do you do life with?
Yeah, so my husband and I, we moved out here about 10 years ago and we were living in a rural area, but I actually grew up in the country. So I had always desired to have a little bit more space. So when God blessed us and we found this space, this little corner of heaven on earth for us, I wanted to really foster that. And so at the time, our oldest son was graduating high school, so he was going to be going off to college. And our oldest son Braden was going to college. Our middle son Gavin was going into high school, and Ava was going into middle school. So it was a big transition stage. And so we moved out here together, and slowly but surely we kind of started a little hobby farm. And but currently my husband and I are now empty nesters, with the baby having just graduated from the University of Georgia. And so yeah. And so it's just he and I, at home. Our oldest son is a captain in the Marine Corps, and so he's currently based in Quantico, Virginia. We're going to tell the story of our middle son, and then Ava will actually be. They say once they fly the nest, they always come back home again. So she'll be returning and living with us for the next couple of years as she gets her master's degree.
Sure, sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just for the record, that enthusiasm that you guys saw from me was for the graduate and the achievement itself. I'm a Vols fan, and actually, I probably shouldn't go down this road. I might get in trouble. But it was not a cheer for the Bulldogs, but it was for the achievements.
Yeah, and as you know, Steve, it's hard for me as well because I grew up in a small town outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I too am a Vols fan. So it's a little difficult to wear that red and black, but we're very proud of her. So we'll sacrifice.
Absolutely. No, I don't think I knew that about you, though. I don't know if we ever covered that ground. Just if you could briefly tell us what little town that is near
Well,
outside
it's
Chattanooga.
actually it's a town in Georgia. It's Trenton, Georgia. It's the very northwest corner of Georgia. So everything that we did, we traveled into Chattanooga to do. And so growing up, my dad we were Tennessee fans. It was easier to get to Knoxville, and of course that was in the best era. That was the Peyton Manning, Fulmer area era.
Yeah,
So it was a lot of fun.
I love it. Go T Martin.
That's right.
Um, so what do you guys typically like to do for fun? I mean, travel's one thing, vacation's one thing, but like weekend fun. What do you guys like to do together?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have people ask me this because we do have a farm and we have a lot of property. And believe it or not, that is what we enjoy doing. He and I both are project people. We love to work on a project, whether it's a garden project or something around our place. And we enjoy doing that together. We try to make sure we get some date nights in and actually get dressed to go do something, but really it is what we enjoy doing, and we enjoy doing that together.
Okay. Also, how many years have you guys been married?
We will be celebrating 30 years in June 22nd would be our 30-year anniversary.
This June.
Yes, yes.
It's crazy how many people I know and interview that were married in 1996. What
Yeah.
was what was the date again? June what?
June 22nd. Yeah, and
Like
that's insane to me. I mean, and as you get older and your kids get older and you have a 29-year-old and we're expecting our third grandchild, I still look in the mirror and say, how the heck did this happen? Like I was 25, 2 years ago, right?
yeah, we started our family a lot differently than you did, but our 30-year anniversary is July 13th this year. So we're like two
Oh,
weeks behind
yeah,
you.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you as well. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's something
So
to be proud of for sure.
yeah, and a lot of grace and a lot of God for sure.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So let's talk about October 13th, 2023. In some ways, not that long ago at all. And in other ways, I guess probably depending on the day, probably seems like an eternity ago. But you mentioned that we would get into talking about your other son, Gavin. What happened that day?
Mm. Well, that is a day that there is all of my family. I can't just say me. There is all of my family before that day. There is who we were before that day, and there is who we are after that day. And I think most of us as human beings have moments in time that are so distinct in who we are as a person now that it is a different person, and that is what that day is for us. It happened to fall on a Friday the 13th in October that year,
Mhm.
and my husband and I had sat down. We had it was a very normal Friday, and we sat down to watch a movie, and we actually were feeling a little crazy and thought, oh, we'll watch something like Halloweenish, right? With Halloween coming up, and it was Friday the 13th, and it felt appropriate. And so we were scrolling through trying to find something, probably an old classic of some sort, to watch. And it was on my phone, and I received the phone call that is every parent's worst nightmare. And to be honest, Steve, the fact that I can even talk about it and hold myself together is proof that God exists and He is with us through all things, because in that moment, life completely fell apart. I got the phone call, and it was one of our son's friends, and he was screaming, and I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I could obviously tell that it was something horrible. And then when I could finally understand what he was saying, I realized what was happening. And I realized that he was telling me that they could not revive him. The friend also had his girlfriend there who was a nurse. And so she knew what to do. So for about the next 15 minutes on the phone with him, Steve, to be honest, is quite a blur. At one point in time, my husband had to take the phone. We could hear EMTs coming in. It was quite honestly the most helpless feeling I hope that I ever have to feel. I hope I never have to feel that type of helpless feeling again. And it was in that moment that he had,
Take your time.
sorry,
Take your time.
that he had gone home to be with the Lord. And that's the moment that life changed. Yeah. So it's a very defining day for our entire family. Yeah.
I I know it's been close to 3 years, but I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
Um,
And even when you say that, you're so right when you say some days, coming off of Mother's Day is a little difficult. It feels like
yep.
yesterday. But then there are days that quite honestly it feels like it's been 10 years since I've been able to wrap my arms around him and hug him and smell him and hear his voice. The things that we take for granted every single day with the people that we love, that the second it's gone, your body aches for those
Mm.
things again. You would just give anything, for one more hug, for one more conversation.
Yeah, I can't fathom the intensity of what you must have felt pain wise. I mean, yeah, I think most of us, yeah, probably every human being goes through some situations where the heartbreak is intense and it
Mm,
literally physically hurt. But
mm-hmm,
I can't imagine because what you went through is a whole nother level of pain.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I just can't fathom that. And not just you, your whole family.
mm-hmm.
Um, I know it's hard, but let's talk a little bit about the specifics because we want people to be aware of what Gavin endured. And you fill in wherever you want to fill in because there's a history here. And he was on the better side of some
Mm-hmm.
history. He was having major victories in his life
Mm-hmm.
at this stage when you got that call. So I'm sure that added to the shock value.
Mm.
But what, as far as you know, what happened that day?
Yeah, I would like to take you back a little bit, Steve. It's
Hmm.
become a they say that you can turn your pain into purpose, and it is definitely what we've been called to do. And so I would love to share just a glimpse into Gavin's story, and not me sharing his story is I don't want another parent to be worried, or I don't want to emphasize that. It is to truly to share hope. And I know that can sound contradicting as well, because it could seem like I'm not on the side of hope, right? He didn't heal from what he was going through, and he's not still here with us. But that is where my faith has played such an important role, because even though it wasn't the outcome that I had prayed for 6 straight years, God showed me that it was his plan and his purpose. And it's finding a way within yourself to resolve that and to be okay with that. And so, if I could take you back to when Gavin was in high school, Gavin, all of our kids are amazing in different ways, right? If anyone has more than one child, they probably show different personality traits.
Oh yeah.
And it's always amazing to me how the whole firstborn, middle child, and going down can really kind of be true. And Gavin was a very typical middle child. He gave us a run for his money in a lot of good ways. But he was very independent. He was very creative. He was my comedian. That was definitely a middle child trait of his. If a school conference was available, we were having to have it, right? I mean, the older kids get, you shouldn't have to have conferences with their teachers every semester. But we always needed a conference. And, it always started with, Gavin he is so adorable and he's such a great kid. And I'd be like, but, where's the but after that? And a lot of that was because Gavin really did struggle academically. He just didn't catch on as quickly as some. And that became a very frustrating thing for him. Looking back now, there was some diagnosis. I don't think there were proper diagnosis. I feel like he truly had just a processing disorder that you know, which caused him that frustration and understanding a lot of things academic wise. But he had this amazing electric personality. He had a smile that lit up a room. He loved to try new things. He was our out of the box type of kid. If it was out of the box, then he wanted to try it. If it came to sports or the way he dressed, anything, you name it. But because he has to go to school and he has to focus for a certain amount of hours a day, we wanted to do our best as parents. And so to help him with that. And so we kind of went through the process of getting him some help in high school to help him be able to pass, to be quite honest. This wasn't about him, even getting straight A's. And so we did that, and he started on a medication in order to help him focus. And that medication was fine for a little while. He was 16 years old at the time, and he quickly learned how he could abuse that medication. And so we started to see some patterns in his behaviors that were concerning to us that really kind of brought attention to that. And so we addressed that, talked with the doctor, weaned him off of that medication. And then from there, Steve, unfortunately, he began looking for his own coping mechanisms, his own things to help him stay focused and then to come down at night. And so this pattern started to evolve in his behavior that was very alarming to us. And quite frankly, as parents, we were navigating a very new thing for us. And there's no handbook. I don't know if any parents are out there that could,
Yeah.
could testify to that, but there's just no handbook. And you're like, in some situations it requires tough love, and others it just required love and acceptance. And so it was very difficult as a parent, and you really do start to question yourself. Every move that was made, it was like, are we making the right decision? What do we do? Again, it was a very helpless feeling. And it kind of came to a head his senior year of high school. And we got a call from the law enforcement that he was in a different area. He had taken his truck, and he was just not in a good mental state, so much so that they called us. And so we went to pick him up. And it was in that moment that I looked at my husband and I said, we are not equipped to do this on our own. We cannot help him on our own. What we've been doing for the last year and a half is not enough, and he needs professional help. And so we went to the hospital, and we had to go into the ER, and he was not in his right mind at all. And Steve, that was the first moment that I looked at him and, sorry, that we had to admit to ourselves that he was addicted, that he was battling addiction, and that sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify the time frame. He's still in high school
He's
when
still in
this.
high school. He's a senior
Okay.
in high school. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so it was in that moment looking at him that I became very aware that he could not just stop this behavior. When you've parented another child, and typically if they did something and you're just like, if you don't stop doing this, this is going to be the consequence. And they're able to stop that. And so we treated things very similarly. And it's not until you I think you have to face this moment to then even for us to even be able to equip ourselves in understanding what addiction truly looks like, and that it's not just a matter of someone making a decision to stop, you know? And so it was in that moment, and we had an angel with us that night. The advocate that came to advocate for Gavin, the hired advocate from the hospital, was truly an angel for us. She was um, empathetic to us and sympathetic to us. She was helping us to make the right decisions for him. Again, we didn't know what to do next, and she was helping us with that. And she was such an answer to prayer. And so from there, he went into his first rehab. And Steve, as a parent, and here you are looking at your 17-year-old, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. He should be, you know, according to life, what life we think life should look like. He should be graduating high school and making his next decisions about life and all the great, exciting things that should be happening. And we were visiting him in a rehab, and it felt
Mm.
very hopeless. And it brought us to our knees. Really, it truly brought us to our knees, because it was probably the first time in parenting, and we had been parenting since we were 20 years old. So this had been quite a long time of parenting, but probably for the first time that I truly realized that we have to surrender, that this is truly about surrendering our children to him, because there was just nothing that was in our control that we could do. And so he was in that rehab, and it was a successful stay. He came out and did really well. We got him graduated from high school, and not the traditional way. I laughed about that and said that I deserved a high school diploma again after getting him through that. That was me toting him to go to classes and getting that done. But we were determined that he was going to have that accomplishment underneath his belt, and knowing just what that would do to his self esteem if he didn't,
Right.
and if he did, what that would look like, the difference. And then, if we can just fast forward from age 17 through about age 22, it was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster of him doing really well, and then him um, not, and him losing his sobriety, and along the way and through the walk of addiction, that comes with a lot of heartaches, because when someone is in the peak of their addiction, you're looking at a person that you do not recognize. Physically you might recognize them, but emotionally, and you just don't know who that person is.
Mm.
They say things that are not like them, they do things that are not like them, and most of the time those are very hurtful things that come with very harsh consequences on the other side of that. And so when I say it was a roller coaster, it was a roller coaster of his sobriety, but it was a total roller coaster to our entire family. Um, you had an older brother that was affected in one way. You had a younger sister that was still at home that was affected in a totally other way. You
Mm.
had a marriage for my husband and I, our marriage that is greatly affected,
Oh yeah.
because of the stress that just puts on everyone. And so it it was a solid 6 years that felt like 20. I mean, it just was so heavy for so long. Little things, Steve, like my phone could never be on silent. That
Mm.
was, it could never be on silent, because it was more than likely, at least a couple times a week, I was going to get a phone call from Gavin at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock in the morning, that meant that I had to go pick him up from somewhere or had to help him in some sort of way. And so it was as if I just couldn't find a peace in that season of life. Um, it, it,
What? Well,
the
and I want to camp there for just a second, Nicole, because and I may not use the right um, therapeutic term or counseling term, but what you're describing right now in that 6 years, not only was the phone never off, you were never
mm,
off,
mm,
and that's trauma.
mm-hmm,
And I believe, again, anybody listening that's got a license, a counseling background, feel free to tell me if I'm off, but that's secondary PTSD.
mm. It really is, Steve. I had a girlfriend. I have a really funny girlfriend, and she would take Ambien at night. This is our side story, but this proves that I agree with that. She would take Ambien at night, so she would text our friend group text at like 2 o'clock in the morning because she was up. And I finally had to let her know that I had to come off the group chat. And she was like, why? And I said, Chili, because when I get your text, it shoots me up out of the bed and my heart rate immediately
Yep.
is, and my blood pressure is immediately through the roof. Like I am
Yep.
just in immediate response mode of responding to whatever tragedy or whatever has just happened. And so you're exactly right. It feels impossible to be able to sit in any kind of moment and enjoy it. And it is truly where my heart breaks for families who have walked this same exact walk. And it doesn't matter what family member it is that is struggling with addiction, it is a ripple effect. It affects everyone that is tied to that person in some way, shape, or form. And it makes it very difficult to relax around that person that you want to love so deeply. It makes it
Yeah.
very difficult to relax in situations. They become very unpredictable. And so, even when we would have family events, we host family events at our place. It's one of the many, many blessings that have come from us living where we live. But it was hard because I was always on alert of what could happen next and what may be around the corner. And truly, unless you have walked that walk, you cannot understand that feeling. And you're on high alert all the time, all the time. And so if I could kind of scoot forward to about when Gavin turned 22,
Mm-hmm.
um, he had gone through, at this time, we had been in 4 different rehabs. Um, he desperately wanted to get well. And I think that's an important thing for me to share because I just haven't met anyone who struggles with addiction that loves where they're at and loves who they are. They desperately want to be different and want to be able to escape it. I heard the analogy of, they said, if you want to try to understand even just a fraction of what an addict is feeling, put your phone down for one solid day and then count how many times you think about picking that phone up.
Mm.
And that is just a fraction of what their brain is experiencing. And so he desperately wanted to get well. Gavin knew the Lord. Thank God he became a Christian and had a very personal relationship with Jesus. Gavin was a journaler. And so for all those years, he was journaling letters, and most of them were to God, asking for help, pleading for help. And so he was always willing to go and get help. He was willing to talk to a counselor. He was willing to take all the steps. And so at 22, he relapsed again. And addiction escalates. So what it usually starts with is not what it ends with. And so it had escalated with what was his preferred substance. And so he relapsed, and it was, he didn't have much option. It was done. You have to do, you have to go to rehab again. And so we found a local one, and that actually was really great because throughout that 8 months of rehab, we were able to see him at least every Sunday. And through that 8 months, Steve, there was so much reconciliation
Mm.
and healing that happened and conversations that we were able to have with Gavin. He finally looked at himself and realized that he couldn't do this on his own, and he had a sponsor. He was walking the steps of sobriety. So I will never forget a phone call, and he called me, and he was not having a good day, and he said, "Mom, this is going to be the hardest thing that I have to do, but I have to make those hard phone calls, and I have to make right what I've wronged." And so that was kind of where he was in his steps. And um, he went through and completed the program. And we got to see and experience and feel our son again. And it was such a beautiful thing, and we had so much hope. You as you should, it was the hope of, this is going to be the
Hmm.
time, this is the time. Part of it I felt always felt like was maturity. He was so young, as a boy especially. And so we just had a lot of hope. And then that led up to October 13th, when he had just come out of the rehab that he was in. He was spending the night with this friend who was a great friend for him to have. He understood his sobriety. He was supportive of his sobriety. And Steve, one thing that I'll never be able to understand is Gavin did buy a hydrocodone, was the pill that he bought. Um, and I don't know. Was it because he was so nervous about reentry, which is what in my head as his mom, I feel like it was. He kind of wanted to be able to relax a little bit. Was it the right decision? Of course not. Absolutely not. And that one pill was laced with fentanyl. And that one pill took his life within a matter of seconds. And so then that, brings us to that defining day.
There's no magic words that I'm going to be able to say here to make
Mm-hmm.
anything better. So I'm not going to try to do that. What I am going to say is I'm so grateful. I'm going to say a couple things. I'm so grateful that he had gotten help. You guys had surrendered. He was starting to surrender. He had a sponsor. He had a supportive circle. He was starting to mature through it. Um, did he make his mistake? Yep. But you know what? We all do. He wasn't trying to harm
Mm-hmm.
himself. I don't hear
Mm-hmm.
that at all. Um, and I'm so glad that you guys had reconciliation, because there were some difficult years in there. And I know this message is getting out there more and more all the time, but I would be remiss in our small piece of the world with our network. Guys, don't play with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fentanyl, he didn't know it had fentanyl. He didn't
No.
know
Oh
it was
no.
laced. But that's part of rolling the dice too, right? And
That's
and,
right.
and fentanyl kills.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to have to be so blunt with it,
Mm-hmm.
but it took fentanyl took Nicole and her family's loved one away forever.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, you don't know what you're playing with out there with stuff on the open market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave that there. Don't
Mm-hmm.
play with it. I want to camp here for so long, Nicole, but I know we can't. We have to transition as hard as it is. I know that God doesn't waste anything, even the hardest
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm. No, I realized through this that so if I could take you to the following days, because these days are just as defining as the moment that he went home to be with the Lord. The following days, our home filled with quite literally hundreds of people in support and showing us love in so many different types of ways. And it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming to feel this magnitude of love and support from our community. And I remember saying to my mom that the following 24 hours are a total blur for me. It really probably close to more like 2 days, the 48 hours. But once I was able to kind of come out of it a little bit, and I said to my mom, and I was so angry at God in the moment, because Steve, the reality is I had faced the possibility of this in my quietest, darkest moments in the years before. I had
Mhm.
faced this. I knew this was a possibility, right? Because he was running the risk. it's a possibility for any of us. I mean, our,
Mhm.
our last
Mhm.
day could be today, our
That's
last breath
right.
could be this afternoon, but he was running a greater risk. And so I had faced this. And I guess I had imagined, I had this thought of what it would feel like and how I would just feel his presence so strongly. And that I just knew it was almost like I felt like he would just lift me up on a cloud and, be there. And I did not feel him at all. And I was so angry. And I thought, you have abandoned me now? Like I am in my most desperate hour. I feel totally alone. I was distraught. And it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 days after that I really heard God say, Nicole, I never left your side. Those hundreds of people that showed up, those were all me. That was me. That was truly the hands and feet of Jesus walking in and out of our door. I mean, just in a constant revolving door. And when he showed me that, it was obviously very comforting and affirming, but I got to know Jesus in a very different way, during that time for so many reasons. And I do wish we had unlimited time, but we don't. But the way that he has showed up, the way that he has been there, whether it's through a person or a conversation or a private prayer, something I could not do
Mhm.
actually months following Gavin's death was I could not listen to praise and worship music and I couldn't figure it out. I mean, this is me being really raw
That's
right now.
real.
It
Yeah.
got on my nerves so bad. Like it just like I would like angrily shut the radio off. And I was like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I don't want to hear praise and worship. I don't want to hear how I just didn't want to hear any of it. But what I did want to hear, I wanted to hear instruments. Instrumental music calmed my spirit.
Mm.
It brought me into a place with him. Maybe it was one scripture. I held on to Psalms 23. So for weeks following, I could not fall asleep, but I could quote Psalms 23, and it's what put me to sleep. So instead of counting sheep, I was quoting Psalms 23 in my head. And so it was in those moments, Steve, that I was able to experience the training that I had done in my walk with the Lord and my walk with Jesus. The years I've been a Christian since I was 8, and I've actively been in the Word, and and it was in those moments that all that showed up, right? That all that, got me through. And so I encourage people, not only do we need to train our children up in the way that they will go, we've got to train ourselves up, because it's not a matter of if life's going to happen and the bottom's going to drop out. It's when life is going to happen and the bottom's going to drop out.
That's so, so true. I tell people all the time, it's not exactly fair. I kind of set him up. I said, do you love all of Jesus's promises? And people, without thinking about it, say, absolutely. I'm like, you like the one where he says you will have trouble?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I don't like that one. I don't hear me clearly. I don't like all the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it all, though.
That's right.
And I don't get to pick and choose which ones I apply, although I'm flawed. But you're right, Nicole. We will have trouble. And as believers, we're going to have more because there's more opposition from the
Mm-hmm.
enemy who wants
Mm-hmm.
to steal and destroy
Mm-hmm.
what we
Mm-hmm.
have.
That's
You
right.
know, it I've got some thoughts going through my mind that I'll have to share with you another time, but there may be something you and I need to process is having you come back on at some point. But for now, I want to know how you're keeping Gavin's memory alive through the nonprofit. I
Mm,
want you to tell us about the nonprofit. I want you to tell us the name because I know Gavin had a huge hand in that too.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
beautiful
And Steve, I
story.
want to share real quick though, because I feel like this is a very important part of this journey is that in the months following, because it has been almost 3 years now, and probably the most profound thing that God has shown me is that He answered my prayer. Okay. He did, He answered my specific prayer for Gavin because my specific prayer for my son was that he not be in pain and that he be healed. And God did exactly that, just not in the way that I desired. And so when he and that was an audible voice, that was something he audibly told me is I have healed him. He is whole. He will never suffer another day of his life. And when my heart truly absorbed that, I could rejoice in his going home with the Lord. I started to see life completely different. I have always believed in heaven. I have always known that's where we will go when we have a personal relationship with Him. But I truly never sat down and really studied and wanted to know. I mean, I had such a hunger for knowing all that we could possibly know about heaven. And there's a lot of resources out there, obviously scripture teaching us, but when I truly felt that, Steve, that is still till this day on May 11th what gets me through. That is the
Mm.
thought that gets me through is knowing that he is rejoicing. He is not in pain. He is whole. He is healed and that God fulfilled that promise to me. And I, I don't believe that Gavin was scared of death. I really don't. I believe that Gavin knew I know that he knew where he was going. And I don't know what his private prayers were. Maybe he was asking God to take him, to deliver him from that pain. But Gavin, I shared with you that he journaled. And so we were left with the gifts of his journals. And when we found them, he had them in this almost like an old, like it was like a bowling, like a case for a bowling ball that he had. It's a random thing, but he had all his journals in there. And we found them and we found beautiful letters that it was almost as if he was writing to us, right? That was such a gift. And so we
Oh,
framed
wow.
some of them. He had written a poem that was in his the thing for his service. It's on his gravestone that we are left with. And part of that is a logo that he had designed. And Gavin was, I told you he was out of the box, but he was also had a very big entrepreneur spirit. And so when he was in high school, he said, I'm going to design a merchandise line. And so we're like, okay, we always try to support, all those types of ideas. And so he sat down for weeks and scribbled on, I mean, I have the papers of all the scribbles that he had. And he came up with a 7 and an L. And I was like, oh, son, that looks really cool. And he was like, yeah, it stands for seven love. And we were like, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, seven is God's number of perfection, and that's how he loves us perfectly. So it stands for God's perfect
Um,
love. And I was like, okay, I can get behind that. Like, I can stand behind that. So he created a logo and he went through having it trademarked and did all of this on his own. And he printed t shirts and hats. And of course, every family member bought one. We all had one to sport. And we were just so, so proud of him. And so it, we knew, several months after, it was probably about a year after when we really started to feel the tug of what are we going to do with this? How are we going to turn this in to something that not only honors Gavin's life, but that can help other people that have to endure the same type of pain and the same type of journey that we endured. And so we knew that that meant starting a foundation, and we immediately knew that that was going to be called the Seven Love Foundation. But what did that even supposed to look like, right? And so, Steve, our mission is not only to help the one struggling with addiction, but to support the family who is walking alongside that person. There are a lot of great places that support the one that's walking the battle of addiction, right? There are some great places. And so my husband and I, actually my husband and Braden and Ava, our kids sat down and we said, what does this need to look like? What did we need the most? And we needed direction. I mean, when it was looking at that first rehab, Steve, it was incredibly expensive. I mean, it's outrageously expensive. There are lots to choose from. How do you know which one is the best one? Which one is, there was just so many unknowns. And so our prayer and our goal and our mission is to help walk a family through that process by helping them with those resources, helping to guide them in the next best step for them, and prayerfully, Steve, one day financially being able to help them in that journey, as we're able to raise funds. And that's what those funds would go for, is to offer that type of support to them. And we just know so deep down in our heart that Gavin would be so proud that that is what we're doing with the legacy of just that logo that he created, but and helping other people that are just like him, that are amazing, amazing people that have a burden that they are carrying that is very, very difficult.
That is so incredibly beautiful.
Mm,
Uh, from the name to the logo to the fact that your son designed that
hmm
to your whole family uh, working together to collaborate on what the mission was going to be. I see God in all of that.
mm,
That's God using tragedy for good in the best
yeah.
way. And tell us where folks that are they're listening to this today and they're moved by
Mm,
Gavin's story, your family's story, but they're also perked their ears when they heard the mission of the foundation. Where can
mm.
they learn more about it?
So right now we have an Instagram page it's seven. It's the number seven Love Foundation. And that's where you can find us right now. So anything that we're doing or that we have going on with the foundation can be found there, which is also linked through my private, like my personal Facebook page as well, and Instagram page.
But you gave me the link to the Instagram, right?
Yes, I
So,
did.
so we'll,
Yeah,
we'll the link Nicole's talking about for Seven Love, we will include that in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about it, you can check that out. I take it at some point there's a website coming soon, right?
there is. Yeah, definitely in the works for sure. And it's ever evolving, right? I mean, this is
Sure.
we didn't wait for everything to be perfect before we started because we just wanted to get it out there, and it's been really exciting, Steve. We have been able to help two individuals to get them connected to a rehab and have gotten word from their families that they're both in recovery and doing well. And so that's been
Woo.
just a huge answer to prayer.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
huge. And you're able to listen to Christian music again?
I, I am. I am.
You're laughing. I'm glad we're ending this with
Yes,
laughter.
I am able to, and I truly love, I love it, and it's uplifting, and but I like to be real about that. That's
Oh yeah,
okay.
it
Because when
is.
you're in the midst of tragedy, everything feels different. There is nothing the same. And we have this expectation of ourselves that we're supposed to operate the same way. And I had that expectation. And that's where I did feel unworthy. That's where I did feel like I didn't have my stuff together because I thought I was supposed to be one way and I just couldn't do it that way. And the enemy, any little crack, the enemy's going to get in, right? So the enemy just wanted to say to me, oh, you know, this was you. You didn't parent well enough. You didn't do this well enough. You didn't do this right. This is, and I
Get
had to
behind me,
shut that.
Satan.
Yeah, I had to
Yep.
shut that down so quick. Because of course he would want me to feel that. Of
Yeah.
course he would want me to carry guilt, and shame. Um, that's in my opinion his number one offense, right? But he's not very creative. So as long as we can recognize it, we can fight it.
I tell my congregation often, including yesterday, and I preface this with, I've not been through what you've been through. I'm not trying to compare it all. We've gone through a really heavy situation in the last year with our daughter and granddaughter that's 6 months old, and we've met her for 30 seconds and have not held her yet.
Mm,
Intense situation. It's ongoing. Nowhere near your situation. I'm not trying to compare. But we go through things where sometimes the best prayers we have to offer are a tear,
mm.
a
Amen.
groan.
Yeah.
Paul addresses that in Romans. The
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
Spirit intercedes for us. I can't tell you at the height of its intensity, I can't tell you how many days. Okay, I'll be vulnerable here. I can't tell you how many times in the middle of my tears in my car trying to pray on the way to the gym when all I had was just help,
Yeah.
just help.
Yeah.
And you know what? He meets us there.
That's right.
And he's met you there, I am
Mm-hmm.
sure, many, many days. And he's shown
Mm-hmm.
you his faithfulness. He showed you his love, like he reminded you with all those people that were in your house.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm honored, Nicole. I'm the one that is standing on holy ground right now, just listening to this.
Mm.
And I'm sorry we're out of time because I we could keep going on and on. But I want you to do us one last favor. I want you to just briefly speak to the person that's watching this that maybe it was everything it took for them to get out of bed today. Maybe they're just not feeling, maybe a person's watching this and doesn't feel worthy
Mm-hmm.
of love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what encouragement would you leave that person today?
Mm. Yeah. To that person, I, you can know in your head how much God loves you. It doesn't mean you always feel it in your body and in your heart. And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes it is just getting through that day, but making sure that you wake up the next day. What I learned is that God actually only gives us what we need for that day. That's his
Yeah.
promise. It's not, I'm going to give you what you need for a week from now, a month from now. And I don't think we really understand that scripture until you're at a place of desperation, because you're floating through life otherwise, right? You're not needing him at the same capacity. But when you desperately need him to just get out of the bed, to just be able to swing your feet to the other side of the bed, because you know that in that day you're going to feel more grief or more pain or more suffering because the situation hasn't changed. God is just asking for your obedience in that moment to put your feet on the ground one more day, and then He will do the rest. It may not look like the way we think it's going to look, but He will do the rest. He will provide you with the strength needed for that day. And I want to read something real quick, Stephen, wrap it up with this, but it says, this is by Randy Alcorn, who wrote a book about heaven. And
Mhm.
he says, Hope, if you are a Christian suffering with great pains and losses, Jesus says, be of good cheer. John 16:33. The new house is nearly ready for you. Moving day is coming. One day soon, you will be home for the first time. Until then, I encourage you to meditate in the Bible's truths about heaven. May your imagination and your heart rejoice. And so that statement was on my bathroom mirror because it offered me so much hope that this is not my home. The pain and the suffering that we endure and experience here is temporary. And I think you have to, with all confidence, know that. And so if you don't know that, I'd say first that is what you're seeking to know confidently. So that then again, when the bottom drops out, when life gets super, super hard, you are confident in where to turn to.
I love that advice. Nicole, I know the conversation's been emotional. I know it's not easy to relive, but I also know your heart. If it helps somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
that you do it
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. And
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing vulnerably. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for being hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for what's giving us a picture of what's coming because it's beautiful. Thank you.
Mm. You're welcome. And thank you so much for, anytime we can share about our beautiful Gavin, but most importantly, to let people know that you will be okay. Like you will be okay. Um, and if just the right person hears that today, then yeah, then that's why we're here. And thank you, Steve, for what you're
Well,
doing too, to offer so much hope to to people around you, and in the people that God are bringing into your life.
I'm just doing my part like you are to give back. And,
Yeah.
guys, as we close it out, I am confident there was days, maybe even consecutive weeks, maybe even a couple of months on a pop where Nicole, different members of her family, wondered if they'd get through this. That
Mhm.
intense. Here's the good news without minimizing their pain. God wasn't done with their story yet.
Mhm.
God's got more. His
Yeah.
mercies are new every morning. Lamentations 3:22 and 23, I believe.
Mm.
One day at a time. Guys, you're in the middle of a chapter right now, but God's still writing the story. Don't try to take the pen away. It hurts more when you try to take the pen away. I appreciate each one of you. Till next time, God bless.
Bye bye.